Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. I have an extremely wonderful person here with me today, someone that I have described multiple times as a community builder here on BookTube, and I think there is probably no greater praise for our fellow booktubers out there. I am so happy to have Jimmy here from the Fantasy Nuttwork. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. I'm thrilled. I've been looking forward to this ever since we planned this like weeks and weeks ago.
Yep.
I kind of said, honey, we got to clear out the schedule on Saturday. The banners have been called. I got to come to the Great Council. I got to sit down with Philip. And I always love our chats. You know, you've been on my channel a ton, so I'm glad to be here on your channel. And I just always look forward to talking to you, man, and hanging out.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. You've been on my channel before for the Shadow of the Gods discussion. That was a lot of fun. We had a nice big group there. It was a lot of fun to get together with everybody. But it's the first time I'm having you on the channel, just you and me having a chat mano a mano, right?
Yeah, one-on-one. No cage match,
right.
though.
Yeah. No cage match. No, I don't think that would last too long anyway. So
we can make it interesting.
Well, you'd have to catch me. I'm a pretty good runner. So
that could be my downfall. I have bad knees.
Ah, there. See, you gave away your weak point there. So, but no, I remember going back. You know, I remember the first time I came on your channel, and it was. It seems simultaneously so long ago, and yet it could have been yesterday. It's one of those weird things. But do you remember what I did when I appeared on your channel? I did a Malazan sales pitch.
You did. You absolutely did. I said, this is basically a Malazan infomercial.
Yeah. And now you finished reading the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Wow.
Yeah. How far we've come. Thank you. I appreciate it. I couldn't have got through without you. You know, I think if you go by raw numbers, I think if you go by hours, right, on my channel, you have been featured on my channel more than any other guest. Even Alan, I think, even with all of his chatting. I think so, because you've been on Chat with Nuts twice. They were longer episodes, and we've done a ton of spoiler discussions for Malazan, and you've really been the backbone for those. It was weird doing one without you. Honestly, we did Dust to Dreams, and I know you're rereading it right now, and you wanted to be fresh and everything. So, which is cool. But man, we missed you. And Joanna and me both said even before, like, it's kind of weird not having Philip here, because like you're such a pillar in the conversation. One, because you see things we don't, and you are an experienced reader of Malazan, so you always end up bringing up things that we've missed almost every single time. So your presence was missed, but also appreciated through all the other previous episodes we did.
Yeah, it was a great episode, though. I enjoyed listening to you and Joanna and Andy. I thought you guys had a great discussion. And but if you do have a Crippled God discussion, I hope you will invite me.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So, yeah, I've enjoyed that very much. It's really something how you can talk to various people about their experience of a series like that, and you learn something new from everybody. And that is the joy of BookTube. It's something I've always found as a professor too, you know, teaching. I always learn from my students, no matter what. I mean, they have experiences that I don't have. So you've always brought stuff to Malazan that I've appreciated. And so it's been a real pleasure being part of your Malazan journey, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that you said yes. And and I'm glad that you sold me on it, because a lot of times there's so many things we want to read, right? Like, you know, I've seen your quarterly TBRs. They're massive. And you're just like, I hope I can even get through half of these.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of creators that did push me into reading Malazan, like Andy, Rhythma, you, and then various other people as well. And it was one of those things where you kind of gave me the last push over the edge. And I think I read the prologue that night that we finished that up, because you had me so excited, because you were just so well spoken on. And also, you've read a ton of stuff, and I think that you have a different way of engaging with what we do, like with reading. And to hear you give it such high praise, I know that there's something in there, right, that I can latch onto. And it was kind of the final kick over the edge. And I'm so glad that you did. I really am. Because sometimes it can be overwhelming, right? When people, hey, read this, you know, you get the comments, read this next, read this. And it's like, oh, okay. But you really solidified the fact that it was something that I needed to try. And I'm glad I did. So
yeah, I'm glad you did too. I mean, for me, and there's a range of opinions, obviously, on any book and any series. But for me, I really meant what I said at the end of our discussion we had with Joanna on her channel, her sort of end of the series discussion where you and I and some of our other friends were there with including Alan, who had, you know, the horns.
That thumbnail was just cash money. It was so good.
Especially coming from Joanna. I love that thumbnail, you know.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. But the horns on Alan, that's just classic. So, but at the end of that discussion, I said something that I have said before, but I think it's absolutely true. For me, at least, this is a series that is just great literature, period. And it's something that I can come back to again and again and again, the same way I come back to Hamlet, the same way I come back to Beowulf, the same way I come back to what everybody describes as classics. And for me, it's just great literature that examines the human condition in a way that I find so moving and sublime. So it's a series that I'll never stop talking about, and I'll never stop reading. So
yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring it up, because it really resonated me when we ended the conversation, you saying it's great literature. And I started to ask myself the question, well, what is great literature?
Yeah.
So it sounds like for you, you feel like it is inspecting the human condition and the ebbs and flows of grief and the love and all these different themes. Would you say that to you is what great literature is?
I think so. I think that great literature tends to last. There isn't that aspect of it where it speaks to our experience in this world and helps us to grapple with what's around us, to make sense of the chaos that is life, to put some form on it that allows us to process it. And I read a couple of essays by the fantasy author Stephen Donaldson recently.
Yes, I love that video.
Yeah, he had some just, I thought, tremendous things to say about what particularly epic fantasy can do, and how it is, he called it the literature of reintegration. And meaning, and it's not a complex concept, really. It's just that epic fantasy has the capacity to help us to feel like we have a place in the world, to have the strength to craft meaning for ourselves, and that we have a connection to the people and the life around us. It gives us that sense of meaning. It gives us a sense of significance in a world where, let's face it, a lot of the times, a lot of art, literature, a lot of messages we get are about how insignificant we are, how disconnected we are, how alienated we are, how alone we are. So I like what he had to say about that. And even if it's an illusion, even if, you know, you engage with that epic fantasy, and you, while you're reading it, you're on this journey with the characters, and you have this sense of meaning, I think it's sustaining in a way. So
yeah, I would agree with that. And I think Donaldson's an interesting person because, you know, he's written a lot. He obviously has Thomas Covenant is a very big talking point when people go through the history of fantasy. And a lot of what he did is mimicked through authors after him in different ways, of having a protagonist that isn't just all, you know, good, right? Donaldson's also interesting because I know that he had concerns at some point. It was within the last few years, I would say, that maybe we were moving back into a machismo, male-dominated fantasy genre. And I read a rebuttal to this from our good friend Professor Fireballs on his old blog. I found this. Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting because one of the examples would be like Mark Lawrence, like more grim insignificance, futile.
So Donaldson was responding to what people call grimdark. Is that kind of?
I believe that was the subcon. And it's been a while since I've read these, so like I don't have all the details. Go check them out, folks. But basically, like Lawrence, George R. R. Martin, Joe Abercrombie, and AP's blog was really fascinating because he takes Lawrence, I think, and Abercrombie more so than George, but he talks about the kind of the merit of these things, and actually that these pieces are criticizing that form of fantasy, not endorsing it.
Right.
And I agree with Professor Fireballs for the most part. But I also think that people take that message and they misconstrue it sometimes. People should know that AP Canavan from A Critical Dragon, aka Professor Fireballs, has a whole
a website called A Critical Dragon, where you can find links to some of his essays and reviews. And
they're really wonderful.
Yeah, this is pre BookTube for him. So
Yeah.
he had a whole, he's got a lot of brilliant articles out there. I've read some of his Malazan ones, and so yeah, he's just got a lot of good stuff out there.
I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning it. I found it, and actually it's interesting. I was looking up, doing some research on George R. R. Martin, and that's actually how I found his blog, because he had a blog kind of responding to the fact that George says that the reason why his work is so brutal, especially towards women, is the fact that he was trying to be realistic with medieval times. Which we know that's a bit of that's not totally true how it's portrayed. Right. And AP had written a blog about that, essentially responding. And I thought it was a pretty balanced criticism of George. As a George stan, I try to defend him when I can, but I thought AP had a really excellent rebuttal to George's excuse. And then reading more of his blogs, I found the Donaldson thing, which I had already read, the Donaldson piece. It was awesome. It was just like I went down a rabbit hole of blog posts from AP and ended up learning a lot, which I think if you listen to AP or read anything AP's written, you end up learning if you're willing.
Yeah. That's definitely my experience. So yeah, well, speaking of George R. R. Martin, I don't know if you're aware, but I've read the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire, A Game of Thrones, probably because I taught it in my fantasy novels class. I think I've read that book probably at least 5 or 6 times. And the rest of the books that have been published so far, 2 through 5, I've read at least twice. So it's definitely a series that I enjoy and love. I think that Martin is a very talented writer. His impact on the genre post Tolkien there aren't too many people who've had as much of an impact on the genre, in my opinion, as George R. R. Martin, even with his series Unfinished. And how many authors can you say that they've had such a tremendous impact, even with an unfinished series? So yeah, he is a very important looming figure, I think, for the genre period. I know there's been a lot of sort of knee jerk, maybe to some degree.
Noise. I call it noise, Philip.
Yeah.
A lot of noise.
Yeah. But I don't think that you can take away from his talent as a writer. I do have my criticisms of A Song of Ice and Fire in general. I think it can be a little voyeuristic at times.
Absolutely.
I'm not always totally comfortable with the way he handles those tougher things that, we've talked about, certainly when we talk about Malazan and how Stephen Erickson handles really tough things. And sometimes I feel like Martin verges on a little bit of voyeurism and a little bit of kind of spectacle. But that for the most part, what he does is brilliant. And everybody who wants to learn how to write great fantasy should read, I think, A Song of Ice and Fire.
I actually agree with you. And him being my favorite author, I had to take a long, especially because, I read that, then I got fantasy, and then you come back to it, which I came back to it just recently for I don't know how many times I've read the series now. It's a large amount, but coming back, you're like, man, I've read 150 books since. Am I going to like this as much? And I've read authors that have become some of my new favorites, like Robin Hobb and Erickson and R. Scott Baker and N.K. Jemisin, all these authors. And I come back, and I happen to still find it very stimulating. I still find myself getting lost in the world. And I think I'm able now, because I've read more things and I've had these conversations with people like you and AP and Joanna, all these people, that I'm now able to figure out the things that really made me tick before I knew they were making me tick when I read that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And I actually agree, but the criticism of voyeurism, I actually agree wholeheartedly. I just read Feast for Crows, which has a lot of explicit things happening, very adult things happening in the book. And I think the missed opportunity for George was the fact that one character, Cersei, has the almost like an addiction to her desires. And I think that you can actually use that voyeurism as I shouldn't say voyeurism, but you can use those details and that grittiness as a way to build the perspective. The unfortunate thing about George is that he uses that exact same tone and approach with all of the characters in the book.
Right.
So he missed an opportunity to go a layer deeper, in my opinion. And that's one thing that Erickson does very well. To traumatic events or adult themed events that happen in his books are totally different depending on the perspective that they're in and the way that people think about it. Whereas George obviously is writing like George is writing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not Cersei experience, it's George. And I do think that can be a little bit off-putting, especially in the later books. Though I find the later book, a lot of people fall off the train. I actually think books 4 and 5 thematically are excellent. So
I agree with you, actually. I think I never got because like he split it in half, it's not as good. People didn't like it because they had to wait to get back to their favorite characters, I guess. But
I mean, I can get that. I can understand that criticism. I think it was Mike, actually. Mike said, he got Feast for Crows open up, so where's Tyrion? And he had to wait another 5 years. I can understand that.
But to me, Martin's character work is so good.
Yeah.
It's so excellent that I didn't mind. I was fine with the characters I was with. I thought this is good stuff. This guy knows how to write. These characters are quite well sketched, and they're vivid, and their complexities, their relationships, their journeys, their arcs are tremendous. I mean, you talked about Cersei, her brother Jaime, obviously Tyrion. All of them have these incredible arcs over the course of these 5 books, and
they change a lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which that's been one of the things that I've noticed that really makes me tick as a reader. And I don't know about you, but like I read trilogies or something, and maybe it's like a newer author or it's more modern fantasy, and I feel like the changes are very superficial as we go forth. Whereas a lot of the fantasy I love has not just physical changes, but those that then have implications on the psyche of the person. Jaime Lannister is a phenomenal example of this. I think Tok the Younger is also a very good example of this.
That also explained your love of Hobb and Realm of the Elder.
Yes, Hobb is massive. Age matters so much in Hobb, even the perspective of age, because this isn't a spoiler, but Fitz is a young boy when the series starts.
Yeah.
And he thinks everyone that's 30 is like 90. My wife is currently reading, and she's like, how old is Burrich? I'm like, oh, he's like 30. She's like, Fitz makes it sound like he's like 65 in a home. It's like so ridiculous. So
but that's how kids think. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I remember that. I said, oh, when I'm 31, I'm gonna have a goatee. Like I thought all these things. Philip, I'm 31, and
where's your goatee, man?
I don't have I can't grow a goatee, and I have action figures on these shelves over here, so nothing changed.
Oh man, well, to be 31 again. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, you look fantastic, by the way. Well, I would love to know your hair treatment schedule, your skin treatment. I mean, you look outstanding, my friend.
For almost 50.
I mean, I was astonished when I found that you were turning 50 this year. I mean, it blew me away.
Well, I don't have a hair I mean, I shampoo my hair twice a week. That's it.
That's it. I mean, maybe it's just your calm demeanor, and you seem to have a very level approach to things, where I tend to not. Like I think I've gotten better at being thoughtful and a little bit more methodical with my reactions to things, because life has a way of humbling you into that.
That is true.
But I feel like you are so calm and even killed. Like, you're just even. And I bet that helps with like bags under the eyes. I got these wrinkles going on here.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. I can't pretend to know the secret, but I exercise, and I've always been, an exerciser. I used to be a marathon runner and a half marathon runner, and believe it or not, I actually even lifted weights in my late 20s and early 30s.
That's where those pipes came from, huh?
Well, I don't know. I don't think you'd be too impressed with how much I was lifting, but I thought it was pretty good. It was way more than I weighed anyway.
Hey, forget the numbers. It's about effort.
Yes. Yeah.
It's about effort.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was, this will not impress you, but I was benching, let's see, I weighed about 160 pounds at most, because I cannot gain weight. I just can't gain weight. And I'm 5'10", just so you know.
I thought you were like 6'6". I don't know why.
I don't know, but people seem to think I'm taller than I am. But yeah, I'm 5'10", and I weighed 160 pounds. And I weigh probably like less than that now. But I was benching about 245, I think. And I'm doing
that's very good.
That's like 5 times too. That's not like maxing out. Yeah.
That's great, man. That's great. I mean, here's a tidbit. I actually don't touch barbells for any of my presses, right? Even in my prime, like in wrestling, I always was a dumbbell guy because of shoulder injuries and stuff I had.
Yeah.
Because when you're younger and you're figuring out the form, you know, you get your elbows all flared out and you're messing yourself up.
Arching your back and all that.
Yeah, like an extreme arch, or like, you know, you're not even on the bench or whatever. Unfortunately, while I was learning the form, I started getting shoulder, and plus I was wrestling, so it was like impact and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of people just get through those and then they're fine. But for me, it was plaguing me and over and over and over. So I switched to dumbbells for more, you know, range of motion, but also I was able to protect my shoulders a bit. So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I stopped doing anything like that a while ago.
Yeah. Now I just read, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Much better for your health, I guess. Or
I hear.
Yeah. But yeah, so I really think that Martin is a writer that I hope that we'll see. Maybe I'm crazy, but I do think we're going to see the 6th book at least.
Oh yeah. I think when the winter comes out, whenever it does, it does. I mean, at this point, anything could ever happen. So, you know, egg on my face, I guess, if it doesn't. But
yeah,
for me, I mean, I get it. There are people who need endings. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think my view on life tells me that it can be over in an instant. It's actually one of the things I really like about Malazan is that sometimes things are not wrapped up in a perfect way, or it's disappointing, and that's life. Now I understand that some people don't like that. Like they get enough utility in their everyday lives that they want to escape. I get that.
Right.
But for me, it's like the personal experiences of reading through A Song of Ice and Fire will never be taken from me, whether or not there's a finish. I will always remember, you know, reading those books for the first time. And I will also remember my rereads because I got something out of them each and every time. I found a plot line in Feast for Crows that I have missed through like 4, 5, 6 reads.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. There is a very subtle thing that's actually built upon from something in book 2. That I found. It's one line, and it's like this isn't like crazy, you know, there's a lot of crazy theories. Like this is legitimate, like it's a piece of the story. So we can talk about it after if you want.
Cool.
It's fascinating. But you know, I'm always getting something out of those books, and there's like a secret sauce, you know what I mean? And I don't know what it is, but there's something about and I'm getting better at picking things out, but there's a secret sauce with just some authors that just work for me. And it frustrates me when I can't pinpoint what that is. And that's why I appreciate what you and AP do so much, where you break things down, because I think that it's helping me kind of get the keys of the kingdom of my own personal taste and what makes everything work. And that's why I like Robin Hobb. I like R. Scott Baker, but I also like John Gwynne. I also enjoy some Brandon Sanderson here and there. Like there's some books of his I would say I love. And it's just, they're so varied and it's so different. And I feel like I can relate to you in that regard, because like I know you love great literature, but you can also enjoy like a passive more popcorny read.
Oh yeah. I love indulging in just a fun, entertaining read. You know, I enjoy Dresden Files, for example. I know that those get a little bit more epic as you go along. I think that's what I hear. I've only read the first 4.
That's what I've heard as well. Yeah.
So, but I enjoy them as certainly if you just read really deep stuff all the time, you're gonna exhaust yourself. So I think there's another side to your brain that you need to feed sometimes with just some fun. And so so Gwynne is definitely like that for me. I enjoy his sort of. There's a nice classical feel to his books too. They feel like a little bit like, although there are some aspects of them that are very modern as well, but they have this feeling of kind of the old, in a good way, tropey kind of classical. He does a lot more complexity than you first think in terms of these tropes and in terms of the good and the evil and all that. He does eventually weave in some complexity there, but you have a kind of a good and evil thing going on. And I enjoy it. It's fun. I don't think that, I mean, you can do some theme analysis there too. There's enough depth there if you want to do some interesting things as well. So a lot depends on the reader and the moment, you know, what you want to get out of it. Are you reading this to just, you know, pass the time and have some fun? Because then you're going to read it differently than if you're reading it to make a video review on it and have to say something where you have to dig a little bit. So yeah, I mean, you can experience them different ways, but that is one thing I like about Malazan, because you can experience it on all these levels.
Oh yeah. Each read could be something totally different.
Yeah.
It's the best deal in fantasy literature because you're paying the same price as another novel, but this is one you could reread like forever. Like you could just read Malazan the rest of the time if you want.
Well, there are people who do. Yeah,
I believe it.
It's true. Yeah, but I often do wonder about A Song of Ice and Fire and how Martin would, and I bet he knows how he wants to end it. I bet he has an ending in mind because that's honestly, even though he's more the gardener type of writer as opposed to the architect, I have a feeling that most people, when they're writing a book, a series of like that, level of complexity, have some idea where it's going to end up. They just don't know exactly how they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I bet you he knows how it's going to end. And I'm just, curious. That's all. I'm just really curious to know. But I don't know if I'm never going to find out. So that does make me a little sad.
So there's certainly a piece of me that's sad about it, but I think I can also, like, some people throw out the rest, right?
Yeah.
The pie crust was bad, so I threw out the whole pie, even though the middle was fantastic. That's not me. I'm an eater. I'm gonna eat the pie. Okay. I have heard Daniel Abraham in interviews, because obviously he works very close, and he did the adaptations for the graphic novels. That George does know the ending. He knows like the last few lines.
Okay. See, I didn't hear that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. And in fact, there's a piece of it apparently that was supposed to be taken out of Clash of Kings, or maybe it was a Game of Thrones graphic novel, like when they were editing it down. And George said, "Oh, you can't take that out. That plays into the last page." Ooh. And it's like, okay, well, what was it? Like, now what was it? And there's speculation about what it was and all these things. I am under the firm belief, like, I know people have their picks, like, I want Joe Abercrombie to finish it. I want this. I'll be honest, I don't think it'll get finished if he doesn't. I just he doesn't seem like he wants that. And apparently, I didn't know this until recently. Someone left a comment and then linked something, but it doesn't seem like Ty Franck or Daniel Abraham, who are like his closest assistants, want to finish it. Like, they were like, we would not at this point finish this, which makes sense because they kind of have their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So,
I haven't read a ton of Daniel Abraham yet. I'm in the Long Price Quartet in the middle of it. I've read the first 2 books.
You're enjoying it, right?
I love it. I think he's a very talented author. He's very different from George R. R. Martin. Yeah. I mean, they're both very good authors. They're both very good character writers. But I would say that Abraham, at least in the Long Price Quartet, I don't know his other stuff yet, but the Long Price Quartet reminds me more of Robin Hobb than it does of George R. R. Martin.
Okay. So I can see that. Yeah, because I read The Dagger and the Coin. I've also read it, book 1 of The Expanse, which I hope to continue at some point. But The Dagger and the Coin is very different. You have like a prodigy banker who's an orphan that also seems to be becoming an alcoholic. I mean, it's just fascinating. And she, she's a young lady. She's only like 16, 17. Our chosen one is usually a sword bearing hero, This person happens to be great with numbers. And it's fascinating. I love it. And now that you say that, I can see some Robin Hobb and Daniel Abraham for sure.
Yeah, just in the focus, not only on characters, but on the relationships between the characters and how rich that is and how complex that is and how one character can simultaneously love and loathe another character. And that's something that Abraham does really well. And that's for me, the biggest interest in the story so far has been those relationships, because it's similar in a way that, for me at least, I felt that Farseer got off to a slow start. And I don't mean bad. When I say slow, I don't mean bad. I mean, it was just a slow burn. I felt invested. It just didn't go bam, 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 bam. There's a lot of character development and world building, and I feel like Abraham is similar. The first book, A Shadow in Summer, is a slow book, but I don't mean bad when I say slow. It's a very rich book, and it's not a big book, but it's a very rich book. It has a lot of great character development, world building, relationships between the characters, just so superb in terms of the observations of human psychology and how we work and how contradictory we are. And that Faulkner quote that George R. R. Martin famously has quoted about the human heart in conflict with itself. I mean, that is something that Daniel Abraham definitely has paid attention to.
Yeah. And I will say this, Abraham is known for his slow book ones. And Alan agrees with me on this because he's obviously finished Long Price Quartet. Now he's in The Dagger and the Coin. Yeah. The book 1 always gets better when you look back. Like, you're in book 3, you're in book 4, and you're like, man, there was a lot of stuff set up in book one that I didn't necessarily know. Now, I don't fault anyone for just, Age of Ashes has come out, and I've seen that the response is the exact same as it's been, unfortunately, for book one of Dagger and Coin and Long Price Quartet. Everyone's like, it's a little slow. Like, did we need to do this for so long? Yada, yada, yada. And I get it. And it makes me sad because I was kind of hoping like maybe this will be his big fantasy series. Like, he has The Expanse, but like I want to see him really thrive in like the popular circles.
Yeah.
So in one regard, I'm sad because it sounds like his new series, he's doing kind of Daniel Abraham type things. But I'm also happy because he's doing Daniel Abraham type things.
Yeah.
He's staying true to his strengths. And I think that is something that I have to commend people for, is knowing what you're good at and sticking to it. I like people that take risks as well. But like Abercrombie's writing a new series, right? Apparently the placeholder name's The Devils. I don't know if it's a book or just a series. I don't know. But he even said on Twitter, he said, it turns out I'm writing these characters and they all sure are very sarcastic and snarky. We could probably expect a lot of that same flavor from First Law in his new work, I think. And part of me is like, darn, I wanted him to go a little bit bigger. But that's not him. That's not what he does, right?
Yeah. Oh, he does snarky really, really well.
Yeah. He sure does.
For sure. It's a tough thing because I think that we're in an era where the screen has really influenced what people want from books. And so a lot of the emphasis on action and dialogue, and a lot of the de-emphasis of description and exposition is, I think, a result of more and more people expecting storytelling in books to be the way it is on screen.
Yeah.
And this has led to, I think, a lot of people expecting that faster pace. Mm-hmm. And that means that somebody who takes their time, like a Robin Hobb or Daniel Abraham, people are going to be, oh, I'm bored with this, let's go on to something else, and of course, I sound like an old man complaining now about the short attention span of the young people these days and all of that because of the internet and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that it is something that has affected books in probably every genre, that people just want short chapters. They want, quick action, dialogue, no exposition, no description, just boom, 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 boom. And for me, that often feels so bare and so shallow. Yeah, I want more depth, and I want to be immersed. And I'm not being immersed if I'm just going from one bang, 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 bang action scene to another. Where's the immersion, But that's how I feel oftentimes when I'm reading some of the newer fantasy. And it's tricky because as an author, you want to write books that people are going to buy and read.
Commercially viable.
But does that, how far do you compromise? Do you say, okay, well, I really wanted to develop this character here more, but this is going on too long, so I'm going to have to cut, half of this scene, or it's tough. So that's the era we're in. And the question is somebody who sticks to their guns and does what they believe is great writing going to be better in the long term? Though maybe it'll hurt a little bit short term, but in the long term, are people going to say, wow, this is actually really quality stuff? And stick around this. So it might be a smart decision long term to do what you think is great writing rather than what you think is going to sell.
Yeah, I think long term is the way to go. And I can relate to this on multiple levels. To relate it back to my wrestling career.
Yeah.
The wrestling business has changed quite a bit over the last 50 years and even the last 20 or even 10, which is wild because I remember looking back 10 years ago when I was doing wrestling and I was like, what, this business isn't what it used to be. Where's the Pipers and the Hogans and the Slaughters? And even then, now I'm looking back fondly on that product because the product is now so far removed. And I'm not hating on the new product. It's just what I fell in love with 20 years ago is not commercially viable anymore. Now wrestling's also changing because there's different ball games in town, all this stuff to get to my point. I watched an evolution of the wrestling business even as I was in it and I was performing. And I had people telling me, you need to do this, you need to cut this piece out. There's very subtle storytelling that can happen in a wrestling ring. And people were trading their headlocks for moonsaults and flips and dives and all these things. And that's fine. There's a place for that in the business. It is spectacle. But when everyone's doing that, Jim Cornette used to say, if you walk out of your house and you see an elephant and a giraffe fornicating, the first few times you see it, you're going to go, what in the world is that? And by day 7, you're like, I wish they would just move. Get out of my way. I got to get to work. and I am
leaving poop on the lawn. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is this? And I totally get what he means by that. So by staying true to the way I was trained and what made me love that business, I stayed the path and I found success from that. And I got to higher places because I was doing what I loved and I did it in my approach. And I think that's the exact same thing as authors. Yeah, you can write that tight 450-page novel and it'll sell. But is it going to stand out amongst all the other 450-page novels from Orbit this year? I don't know.
Right.
Now, I'll be honest, when I see an author nowadays that releases like a 700, 800-page book, my first thing is like, I get a little nervous because sometimes, especially with debuts, right? Like maybe it's not the tightest thing in the world, but I also have my interest peaked and I say, they're doing something different. They're going for it. So to me, that is like a really cool way to stand out, is to kind of throw it back, because what is old is new again. And even on our platform, Philip, I mean, Book Talk is way bigger than BookTube. It's not even relatively close. TikTok book section is massive. So some people would say that we're dinosaurs over here doing these long form discussions.
I just figured out what YouTube is and I'm already a dinosaur.
I'm never going to get on TikTok. It's never going to happen.
No, I'm not. I don't think anybody would want me on TikTok.
But isn't it crazy? We used to talk about 5 to 10 minute YouTube videos and say, look at the short attention span. And now it's 15 seconds.
What can you say about a book in 15 seconds?
Not much. Not much. But maybe throw a meme up on there and do a thumb. I don't know. I'm not on the platform. All I know is my Barnes & Noble has a Book Talk section. And I'm like, what about me? What about Jimmy? What about BookTube?
Yeah, wait. So I don't even understand what TikTok. I've never been on it, and I don't entirely.
Fantastic.
So it's just this, like, my understanding is it 15 seconds? You have 15 seconds.
I don't think there's a limit on it, like Vine used to have back in the day. I'm not very familiar, but I know it is very short. I mean, they're not doing this on TikTok. Like, this is not happening.
They're not having 2-hour chat sessions.
Yeah. So if you want a zillion views, that's the place to go. But I would say that me and you both have long form conversations and discussions, and I think we're doing okay. We've built our own community. Yeah. Are we making tons of money? No, because that's not the intention. But the dialogue is rich and the communities are strong and they're close knit. And I think it's because we're offering something that now is not readily available anymore, because people don't want to sit down and talk in the long form. And a lot of creators, and I don't blame them, they're nervous to do stuff like this.
Interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that YouTube even has been pushing me to do these shorts.
Yes, that's their TikTok answer.
They're trying to answer TikTok. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have not done a short yet, but good luck to people who do. I think that's great. But if it's a way to get views and attention and maybe say something. I don't know. Maybe there is a way to say something profound in 15 seconds.
There is something special about someone who can convey a message in that short of time frame.
Yeah.
I think that is a talent and it can happen, but we know that the mass majority of it is not going to be that. It's going to be a lot of, like I say, noise.
Yeah.
But I'm even speaking on a larger term, that impact on the attention span of the generation growing up with this.
Right.
Do you think they're going to crack open a Janie Warts novel that's 1,000 pages? I hope.
I don't know. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about a long time because I have students.
Yeah.
And for a lot of students, a 10-page short story feels like an eternity.
Oh, no.
So not for all. I mean, there are those who read all the time and love it, and but it's something. I guess we're surrounded. It's pervasive, because if I'm understanding you correctly about the wrestling, it seems like the catalyst behind the changes in wrestling is similar. Like,
it's audience based.
So you want quicker, you want bigger, you want more spectacle, and you want it, without the, because I know you're telling stories when you're doing wrestling too.
Yeah, definitely.
So those stories have gotten shorter and punchier.
Yes, you need to do these things at these camera. I'm specifically talking about the television product. When you're on the independents, you can do whatever you want, really. But the television product, you used to watch a wrestling show and you would have maybe 4 storylines, 5 in a 2-hour window, and you would have like a couple 15, 20 minutes. You'd have one shorter match, right? Whatever. But like when it came to the match, you generally had a good body of time to work with. And in television, it always became shorter and shorter. Commercials got longer and longer, more talking, all of these things. Right. But you cannot tell the same story in 5 minutes that you can in 30. Some people can. Some people are that amazing at this very niche skill. But you can do something much different in 30. And I always felt like myself, I always shined more in the long form. And it's funny because I think I also do better in this realm in the long form.
It's carried over to YouTube. Yeah. For you.
Yeah. I take my time to get there.
Isn't that more dangerous though in wrestling too? If you're wanting more spectacle and you want it quicker and faster and bigger, doesn't that pose a bigger risk to the athletes who are doing this?
Yeah, a lot of times the longevity of a career is impacted by the style that you take on. And I wasn't even that flashy. Like this dude, I don't go backwards. I don't do backwards flip. I don't do any of that stuff, right? But even just through wear and tear of normal wrestling, like I would say I had a pretty mundane style. I'm facing those repercussions today. So I can't imagine these guys who are doing flipping pile drivers off aprons and stuff. I can't imagine what's going to happen to them when they're 40 years old. I mean, more power to them, but yeah. So yeah, your longevity is also shortened. Yeah. Because people want something new too. Like people get like they'll cheer for someone and then they'll flip. It's wild.
Wow. Yeah, it sure has an impact. I know I'm have a couple injuries from overdoing it with the marathon training as well. So yeah.
That's why I like repercussions in books, that like whenever someone gets into a battle, maybe they lose a couple fingers. Like I like seeing that. Tad Williams, I can't say what it is, but Tad Williams has a person who goes through a physical altercation and they lose something near and dear to them. And Tad goes on the nose with it. He makes it very evident what they lost, and the person kind of clambers onto it like a trophy in a way, of a reminder of the pain they went through. Yeah. So I've always loved physical consequences in books that carries through multiple entries into the story.
That's something you have most definitely right away in Farseer, because it's young Fitz, but who's telling the story is a Fitz who's older, and you can hear the pain in that voice that is telling the story. You can hear the wounds, you can hear the experience in that voice. And it's really well done. So I mean,
it's almost a masterclass in perspective. And I don't say that. Erickson actually said that. He said that he uses her as an example when he talks about perspective control in his workshops. And going back and reading through Farseer just a little bit, since my wife's reading, so good.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. I'm going to be rereading Farseer, Live Ship. Maybe what's next? Tawny Man is the third one.
Tawny Man. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get through those 3 this year with AP. I'm going to be, after we finish Malazan, we have a bunch of things we're going to read. One of them is Realm of the Elder Rings, but we're not going to do it straight through. And then another is going to be David Gemmell. Nice. The first, I think I hope we'll get through at least the first 3 Draenei books.
Legend is the first. I'm currently like 3/4 of the way through it.
Oh, cool.
I'm reading it very slow. I need to just like make it my primary book, but it's like the one I pick up, like if I have like a 15-minute window, I just pick it up and read like a couple pages,
So you read multiple books at the same time then, I guess.
Yeah, I've started to. I'll be honest with you, I read more when I do that. I know that sounds weird, but it can backfire though, because like if I'm in the mood for heroic fantasy, so I pick up Gemmell on the side, and then I'm reading something else, and I get out of the mood to read heroic fantasy, then it becomes a little bit of a chore to go back to that book that I started. And I am a completionist. I will DNF books. It's very rare. I will do it. But like, for instance, like Legend, it's pretty good. I have a couple gripes with the way it's aged, but I mean, most books written back then, I think I could do that with. But like, I'm having a great time with it. I just need to finish it. Like, I just need to get it done.
Yeah, it's a gap for me. I've meant to read it to read it for a long time, and because I know that a lot of people, a lot of writers that I love cite Gemmell as a major influence.
Gwyn, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, John Gwynn is a big one there. Yep, yep.
And I think
So
it's fascinating that legend. You can feel, you have Druss as this old character, the old, I love that. The old warrior trope. I'm in. But you're seeing the consequences of that long, arduous life as the big warrior, and the fact that Gemmell was diagnosed with cancer before he wrote that, and you can feel it in the writing at some points. And for what is a pretty gritty heroic fantasy that is fast paced, there are some moments where it slows down with just a line or two that resonate a lot when you think about that circumstance. So
very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But first, we have to finish Malazan, and I'm in the middle of Dust of Dreams right now, and absolutely enthralled. It's just, I love it. I got to tell you, Jimmy, I loved Malazan the first time.
Yeah.
But the second time, this reread has been, and I keep saying it, I don't know how else to say it, but it has been the most profound literary journey of my life. It has been absolutely just, I can't even tell you how amazing this experience is reading it the second time. And a lot of it is BookTube. A lot of it is reading it with AP.
Oh yeah.
A lot of it is having the chance to talk with Stephen Erickson, and also with Ian Esselmont, because we're reading the other series, the other, what I consider to be the other main series, which is Novels of the Malazan Empire. And getting in the enrichment from that side of things too has made me appreciate the Malazan Book of the Fallen even more. So it's all of that, but I think even if I'd been on my own rereading the series, I would have been blown away. But you put all that stuff together, and it's just, wow, the perfect recipe for, I couldn't be more grateful actually for this experience. And I'm kind of, I got a mixture here of excitement, but also, when you're about to get to the end of something really important. I remember when I wrote my dissertation, for example, to get my PhD, I wrote it's like a 350-page book, on it's a piece of scholarship that I worked on for a few years, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. And you would think that at the end of it, I was jubilant, I was happy, but I was mostly depressed.
Yeah.
At the end of it, because you get to the end of that big thing, and then it's like, okay, I don't have anything in front of me now. I don't have this big, thing to look forward to get lost and get immersed in solving this big puzzle. And so I kind of had this anticipation that I'm going to be happy. It's going to be a great occasion, but I'm also going to be just kind of, what's next,
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, man. That's kind of how I feel. I immediately wanted to reread the series after finishing it, and that's partly because I want to see a lot of these subtle clues that I missed on. But it's not like a lot of people say you got to read this 2 or 3 times to understand it. I read books 1 through 10. I kept a pretty brisk pace, and I'm not saying I was never confused, and there's still things I don't understand. But was I told a cohesive story that I can resonate with and like talk about? Yeah, absolutely. This is a series that I pretty much knew when I signed up for it, I was going to be rereading at some point.
Yeah.
And I did go back and read the prologue in chapter 1 of Gardens of the Moon. And it's like, I just want to start all over again. I have the same feeling with Dark Tower too. Dark Tower, I wanted to reread immediately. And I don't get that feeling a lot because I'm someone that does like accomplishing things, like checking things off is cool to me. I like that feeling. I don't read for that purpose, but it is a good byproduct of reading a lot, which I like. There's a little euphoria checking something off the list that I wanted to read for a long time. But Malazan maybe just want to kind of slow down a little bit. And kind of marinate in it. And I'm one of those people, I dread the end of things, and I will sometimes even not end things. For instance, I love Parks and Recreation, one of my favorite shows. I've never watched the last season. I refuse. I just won't do it because I don't want to know it's over. I want to in my head be like, oh no, that show's still going on. Everything's good. I don't want to say goodbye to those characters yet. I didn't want to put myself through it, especially because that show made me so happy through the years. So I've never watched the last season of Parks and Rec. And there are times where I'll get to the end of a book and I'll lose steam, not because I'm burnt out, but because I don't want to face it. And I did feel that a little bit with The Crippled God. Yeah. I didn't want it to be over yet. But then you end it and you just realize that it's not done with you and you continue to think about it. and some of the ways that Erickson poses multiple questions about the human condition.
Yeah.
And depending on the character that you're sitting in their head at the time of this, when this series closes, the answer to those questions are vastly different for each individual in the story.
Yeah.
And for that, it then poses, what character do I resonate with the most, who's finding the answers to these massive questions? And sometimes it's a different flavor of question, whatever. But I'm still thinking about a lot of the questions that were posed, especially in Toll the Hounds.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The book I'd like to reread the most, if I'm being honest, because I feel like I mean, I really enjoyed it, but I think I could take it another layer further because I wouldn't be so much worried about understanding everything. So I think I could really delve more into the feelings of that book and the thematic value that it possesses, because it has a very deep. I mean, the last 3 books to me are so much different than the rest of the series, and you can kind of see it. A lot of people will like peek at Bone Hunters, and then it's a crapshoot what's going to happen in those last 4 books, even Reaper's Gale to a certain extent. But I mean, we know that Toll the Hounds is the cipher to the series. AP's video is phenomenal on that.
It's a great video. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It should be required. If you finish the series, you should be required.
He makes it so clear in that video. I mean, you can tell that he has experience teaching, because he makes it so clear in that video how that works, right? I mean, how it is the cipher to the series. So I would recommend that video to anybody who gets to. I would say it's probably best to watch it after you finish the series. But yeah, Toll the Hounds is the book, I think, of the 10 that so far has benefited the most from a reread for me.
I could see that. I mean, and it's also interesting because like you can almost never really guess what that reread book's going to be, because on my reread, A Feast for Crows and A Song of Ice and Fire is the biggest improvement on reread. It was my least favorite of the 5. And now, like, there's some ways it's my favorite, which is not a popular opinion at all. But every time I reread it, that's the one that starts sticking out more and more to me. So it's just fascinating when you do reread these series that you get a lot out of, like, what is going to be the new experience? What's going to be the new perspective? Because books read you, and where you are in your life and what mood you're in is so important, and has such an impact on what you're reading. It's wild. It's wild. And I'm definitely in a little bit of a post-series slump, not to where I can't read, but I picked up a newer series, and I'm doing a read along on Alan's channel right now for The Emperor's Blades by Brian Stavely. And like, it's good. It's good. But right now it's just like not scratching the itch for me. And I do have some gripes with it and whatnot. I'll put out a review for it or whatever. But I'm like, oh no, like, am I going to be in like this little weird slump now? Cause I felt this after Hob too. So it's like, I hope that that's not the case. Like, I really hope not, but we'll see.
Yeah, because like you said before, I think you said it really well. It's like, which characters' answers am I identifying with at the end of the series, the answers to these big questions? And that can depend on what moment you're in too.
Yeah.
Like it might be one character one day and another character another day. And that's how great these series can be. Yeah. So I don't know, what do you think is going to be the next Realm of the Elderlings, Malazan kind of Song of Ice and Fire experience for you? What's going to be the next,
pillar? I call them pillars because they hold up the foundation of my taste. That's why, like, when people ask me to pick a favorite, like, A Song of Ice and Fire is always going to be my favorite. I don't think anything could defeat the nostalgia, so it is what it is. But like, whenever I people ask me like, what's your top 10? I'm like, well, it's more like what has made me as a reader, like what makes me up, right? And Malazan, Realm of the Elderlings, I would say that A Song of Ice and Fire is obviously on there. The one that I started and I am really into, Philip, I'm going to tell you, is Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, I read Empire of Silence and I was enamored with it. I absolutely loved it. I'm about to start Howling Dark in the next few days, which is book 2. Book 3 is already out, Demon in White, which I've heard only good things about. And then 4 and 5 come out this year. I just love his writing. It's not like the most flowery in the world, but he has like a cadence and a puncture, like the way that he mixes up his short and long sentences and his word choice. It all just flows very easily for me. And I always describe Hob in that way. Hob can get flowery, but her dialogue and the way that she transitions in and out of like internal thoughts, she's just a beautiful writer. Like, in my opinion, Hob's the best writer ever. Like, that's how much I love Hob. And Erickson's writing is also gorgeous. And I would say that he has some sentences that have to be read out loud like it's mandatory that you read them out loud because they're so nice. But Rockio like is somewhere in between those two as far as prose for me. But regardless, the story he's telling and the way he's exploring this character that has done these atrocities, and we're hearing the chronicles of this. Yeah. I'm in. I love chronicle stories, by the way. So I think Name of the Wind will be a big hit with me. I've not read it yet.
I haven't read it yet. Okay.
No, I'm going to read it this year. So obviously I think that has a really good chance, but currently that I know for a fact, I think Sun Eater is going to be up there. And I am really, really excited for Ken Liu's Dandelion Dynasty. And I'm very excited for Janny Warts. Janny Warts, I actually just hope, because when you find a hidden gem, it's like the best feeling in the world, you know? And I want to try her Wars of Light and Shadow, but I also, before I do that, I'm going to do the Empire trilogy with Raymond Feist.
Okay.
And I'm very excited about that. So I would say Dandelion Dynasty and just Janny Warts in general are the two I'm most excited about. Okay. And then currently that I'm actually in the middle, I think Sun Eater has a very good chance to be like my new favorite sci-fi. So yeah,
Janny Warts is the other author that AP and I are going to read together this year. And I'm not sure if we're going to start with the Empire series or trilogy that she did with Feist, or if we're going to start with Wars of Light and Shadow. But my hope is that Wars of Light and Shadow is going to be my next pillar, as you put it. Yeah, because based on what I'm hearing, there are some of my subscribers who have read it or are reading it, and the praise that they're giving it makes me feel like, okay, this is going to be one of those, the handful. And sometimes I feel really silly making these top 10 kind of videos and stuff, but sometimes there's a series that you just want to acknowledge, that you love it that much, and that it's done that much for you as a reader. And I hope we'll see that Wars of Light and Shadow is going to be that next one for me, because I like discovering new, wonderful series. Obviously, that's one of the reasons we're out here on BookTube is to find out new stuff. I mean, I found the
best of fantasy.
That's why it's the best of fantasy. It's my quest. It's my quest for the best of fantasy. So I discovered Dark Tower so far that way, which has become one of my favorites, top 10, if you will.
Same.
And I already knew about the others. I think, are there any of the new ones that have entered my top 10 since I started BookTube besides Dark Tower? I have to think about that.
You're a big fan of Mark Lawrence, aren't you?
I love Mark Lawrence's books. Yeah. I think his first trilogy is all a lot of people know about him, and that is grimdark, but the rest of his books are not grimdark. And a lot of people assume that everything he does is grimdark because of the Broken Empire trilogy. But
I actually did. That's true. I thought that. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
No, I would not categorize, if he had not written Broken Empire and just started with Red Queen's War trilogy, I don't think people would be describing him as a grimdark author at all.
What's your favorite Mark Lawrence series? Is it?
Well, so far I've only read 2 trilogies. I've only read Broken Empire and Red Queen's War. I do have his let's see, what's it called? The one that starts with the one about the assassin nuns.
The nuns. Yeah. The nun series.
It'll come to me in a moment here, but Red Sister is the first one. And it's
I can't remember what it's called. I used to know them all off the top of my head.
The trilogy has a different title to it, but I'll think of it as soon as we're done recording. And
of course.
Someone will tell us in the comments. But Book of the Ancestor. That's what it's called. Book of the Ancestor. Yeah.
That's right.
So I haven't read that, but I have it, and I'm very excited to read it this year. I'm also interested in Josiah Bancroft's 4-book series, 8 books of Babble. That's another one that I think, along with Janny Warts, might be my big discovery for me. I know other people have read them already, but might be my personal big discovery of the year. So nice. Those are the 2 that I have the most hope for breaking into my top 10, which will be problematic because I don't know what to take out of it.
If you want, I can send you the books of Babble. I actually have all 4, and I wasn't the book 1 was just not for me. No real reason other than taste. Just than taste. So if you want, I'll send all 4 because I was actually going to donate them after this.
Oh, that's so nice of you. I actually have them already.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I bought them already. So.
Yeah, I bought all 4, and I'm glad I supported the author because I don't think Bancroft's a bad writer by any means. It's just the story, for some reason, just didn't, you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent execution, good writing, some interesting pieces to the world for sure.
Yeah.
But just wasn't for me, unfortunately. So I'm probably going to donate those away.
Okay. Huh.
What about some of these older series? Like, do you have any interest in Kate Elliott's? It's her 7-book series, and it starts off with like the dragon something. I'm gonna have to look it up. But
Huh.
I've been going back, especially with female authors that didn't necessarily blow up as much, in trying to find these old epic series, because Robin Hobb in a lot of ways was overlooked, right?
Right.
The Crown of Stars. It's a 7-book series from Kate Elliott. And
Okay. I was just looking up Crown of Stars. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard it's excellent. The first book in it is called King's Dragon. And I hear a lot of people relate it to A Song of Ice and Fire, which is kind of like my mission statement to like find more things like like A Song of Ice and Fire. Huh. Are there any older series that you would like to get to?
Well, there are. I don't. First of all, I don't know anything about Kate Elliott's series. It sounds intriguing. And let's see. There are some older ones that I know I want to get to. I don't think they're going to make my top 10 necessarily. Yeah. But you never know. Oh, another series I want to get to for sure is Gene Wolfe's Book of the Sun. Yes. Which I probably won't get to this year. I'm going to try Scott Baker's. You've read the first trilogy, right? First trilogy,
and I just bought the sequel Quartet. Finally, they took forever to come in. I love R. Scott Baker, but it's heavy.
Yeah. The only reason I'm going to read it, of course, and I'm sure I'll love it based on what I've heard, but
you will. Yeah.
The only reason I might not say, oh, I know it's going to be my favorite is I feel like it's going to be a heavy, kind of depressing read.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I do think that there's some sense of like moments there where you're like, yes, I've heard the Quartet following Aspect Emperor is like way darker. So I'm curious to see where I end up in that. Because one thing, and I feel like I always have to say this because I like grimdark a lot.
I do too. Yeah.
But I don't go into it wanting to be shocked. I don't go into it for the spectacle. I go in for the examination of the trauma.
Right.
And I've had to really be very evident about that going through Berserk, which is, in my opinion, the most brutal thing I've ever read in my entire life.
Wow. That's a manga, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe it's published. That's how insane some of the stuff that goes on in these books. And it's actually pushed me past my boundaries to where like sometimes I wonder if I'll just put it down because of how graphic it is. Like that's saying a lot. But
so it puts the graphic in graphic novel, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, and it also, you're forced to see it. You know what I mean?
I was wondering about that. If there's a visual aspect to it too.
The visual pieces are what disturb me more. But with that said, I have to be very implicit about this because, there's a younger audience that reads manga for the most part. And I remember when I was younger, things that were shocking did not bother me as much because you're not reminded of your mortality every day when you wake up with like aches and pains. I feel like as you get older, those things are harder and harder to accept, or not accept, but to subject yourself to that's hard. So when I talk about grimdark and like loving R. Scott Baker, all these things, it's always feels important to me to clarify the fact that it's not because I think that these things that are going in these books are just so edgy and cool and I could handle how gross this was. It's never that. It's more of like literally looking at the deepest, darkest parts of human nature, which unfortunately, like it's something you don't have to consider, but I do think it's important, especially where we live and what we do in America. We are so we're privileged. We're privileged with a relatively safe world that surrounds us. And then you look at some of the things that happen every day in other countries that are just heinous. And for me and in my existence and what I get out of life, I find that there is value to look at the darker side of nature, especially humans, because it puts things into perspective for me a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot, it depends on how the author handles it. Is it put in front of the reader for mere spectacle, to sell a book, to sell a story? In that case, that's not something I'm into.
Yeah, I'm out. Yeah.
But I think that these are legitimate things for us to grapple with in literature.
Yes.
These kinds of, the world is full of suffering. And to ignore that entirely is a mistake. And you need to, I think that's what the purpose on some level, one of the purposes, let's say, of literature and art and music is to grapple with this stuff and give it a form that we can wrestle with. So absolutely, yes. I think if an author handles it well, and it sounds like R. Scott Baker would be an author who would not be doing this for the sake of just spectacle, but that this is something that he's examining, that is part of his look at the human experience and what we are, So
yeah,
I suspect that it's a more responsible handling of these difficult things. But
yeah, I'll be very curious to hear your take, because I'm not the most well-read, or I don't think all my considerations are great, but I'll be very excited to see your thoughts on it as well, because there's some really tough stuff, especially for the female characters in this world. I mean, it is devastating.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
But Esme is the female character I'm thinking of, and Esme is like, I love that character. I really do. I think there's like legitimate gripes, like everything.
Right.
But I'll be very curious to see where you end up and how you feel like the interpretation of all the themes, because thematically, it might be one of the most dense books I've ever read. And obviously R. Scott Baker studied in philosophy, and it's all over it.
Yeah.
I happen to like those things, depending on how the story's told. Like, for instance, like Dune Messiah, I think has a lot of really good philosophy in it and a lot of really good ideas, but Dune Messiah to me is not a great story. Whereas I thought R. Scott Baker had interesting ideas that are worth delving into, or at least examining and critiquing, as well as it's a sweet story. Like, the world building is very Tolkien-esque. And the conflict that's in the world is amazing. And there's a lot of commentary on religion and information. It's very good. I think that if anything, it'll be worth you reading it for all of us to hear your opinions.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm curious to see what I make of it for sure. And like I said, along with that, Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, although that I've heard described as science fiction. I'm not sure if that's fantasy or not. It's science fiction, right? Yeah,
that's what I've heard. Some people say sci fantasy, but I've always seen it categorized in science fiction. And I'm really excited to read that too, because many people consider Gene Wolfe to be the best prose writer of all time.
Yeah, I hear tremendous praise for Gene Wolfe, but you don't see anything about him on YouTube, or at least not in our corner of BookTube.
Not our corner, no.
Yeah.
Moyd talks about him quite a bit, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I want to hear what he has to say about him, and find out for myself too, because I'm curious based on what some of my viewers have said. I think I'm going to enjoy Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, and I'll break my all fantasy rule for Gene Wolfe and for Christopher Rocchio as well eventually. So yeah, I will do that. I've only done it once before, and that was for Dune.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I think Rocchio will be right up your alley, because it's sci-fi. Some people say sci-fantasy, but it's written like a fantasy book. I know that's weird, but it's true. And I think it's also a really good bridge for people who maybe had a bad experience with sci-fi back in the day or want to get into sci-fi. I think it's a really good bridging opportunity for people who want to make that jump.
Yeah, I haven't read a ton of sci-fi that isn't fantasy sci-fi, to be honest with you. Let's see. I mean, I've read Dan Simmons,
Hyperion.
Hyperion.
So
and that I found, I would consider that just hard sci-fi. That's not fantasy sci-fi.
I would agree.
And that's brilliant. I mean, that I read
Amazing.
It. Gosh, I mean, it has to be at least 20 years ago that I read that.
Oh wow, I read it last year. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, your recollection is definitely more fresh than mine. But I will never forget the Shrike. Is that what it's called? The Shrike.
The Shrike.
I will never forget that thing. Yeah, because of how creepy it was.
Iconic. The priest tale is haunting. Dan Simmons also writes horror, and you can tell, because some of those scenes in that book were very scary. I think that's a great piece of literature. I mean, I don't know my head from a hole in the ground when it comes to literature, really, compared to a lot of other people. But for me, if I had to put a label on it, I'd say that's great literature. It won the Hugo, which is impressive.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, usually when they win awards like that, like N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy,
so good.
You read, and you're like, okay, I see why this won. She won the Hugo 3 years in a row, right? I mean,
yeah, she did, and
unprecedented, and no one else has done it since. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And that's a trilogy that I loved. Absolutely.
Same. I book one's my favorite by far. Like, I think book one is like an important book in the genre. Even if it's not for you, I think people can recognize that she's doing something pretty unique there. And then books 2 and 3 I thought were great, but like nothing ever topped one for me.
Interesting.
Bookborn was on my channel last night. We did Chatting with Nuts, and I love the way she broke down what makes Jemison special, specifically in The Broken Earth, is that she's tackling some of the most sensitive issues in today's social structures.
Yep.
But if you read this 100 years before or 100 years after, it's just a great story. So like, you don't have to be living in the time of these conflicts that are actually going on socially to understand and appreciate the great story that's being told to you. So it never comes over the top preachy. And there's a foundation of just beautiful storytelling that happens there. And A Tale of Motherhood, that's one of the best representations, I think, that I've seen. Like, when I think of great moms, I think of Malazan because I like his take on motherhood. It's a very different take. I think of Jemison, and I think of Emma Wang's Sword of Kaigan, which is just it's probably the best mom tale I've seen. But yeah, I think The Broken Earth is something truly special. I do.
Yeah, I would agree. And in addition to motherhood, I would say it is one of the best statements on oppression and resilience that I've ever come across. So it just oppression and what we do to each other, but also the other side of that is human resilience and how we not only survive, but we defy that oppression. And Jemison does just a brilliant job with that. Plus some really cool different world building in there too, and magic, the way it works in there, it comes across as very sciencey as well, but I like what she does with that. It's different.
I was actually shocked by the amount of world building and how much the magic was like thought out. Like, it's close to a hard magic system. Like, it's actually almost there, in my opinion. Like, it's much more explained than a lot of other magic systems. In fact, I said this last night, I said, I kind of wish it was 5 or 6 books long. Like, I wish it wasn't a trilogy. And that's sometimes I think of a longer series. I go, a trilogy would have been fine for this. Why did we do this? This is one of those ones where it's such a good world, so much good magic. I'm like, could we get some more? Like, could we get a sequel? I would be okay with this.
Yeah. And that's another one that has just layers where I read it the first time and there were aspects to it that I had not figured out until I got to the very end. And I read, that's why this, okay. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah.
If you're a problem solver, if you like puzzling things out, I do think the Broken Earth trilogy is one of the better, more modern reads that you can have, with just a different approach to perspective, and it pays off so well.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think that those kind of works are also really important because you talked about, the things that we do to each other as humans and the divide. And I think right now we probably feel like the divide is wider than ever. I don't actually know if that's true. I think we just have access to the divide with information and how the world's changed. But I think that that's why these kind of stories and not just Broken Earth, but all these stories that we talk about and like we have these conversations about are so important because it bridges the gap in a lot of ways. And you can start to see things from other people's perspective. It's something that Malazan and Realm of the Elderlings really instilled in me. Was considering my place in the world and considering the impact I have. And I can tell you that since I've read, the velocity of which I've changed as a person has never been this quick ever, because I'm constantly figuring out new things for myself. And I think that's why reading and talking about books is so important.
Yep.
Because it is the bridge for a lot of people.
Wow. Jimmy, that's a beautiful thing to say. And I completely agree with you. I think that you're absolutely right about the power of storytelling to bridge gaps. And that is something I agree with you that we desperately need today. Desperately need. And that's something that you've been really great at. I called you a community builder, and that's for me, a high compliment. And it's something that I love to see here on BookTube. We definitely have had our disagreements here on BookTube. We've had people mad at other people for various reasons. We have, sometimes people are, get upset about things, but for the most part, I think it's a place where we come together and we learn from each other. And that's a good thing. And there's always a risk of us disagreeing about things. But the important thing is to, I think, as much as possible, see the humanity in each other. Yeah. It's there. Even with people that you feel like they don't share my politics. I can talk to people who don't share my politics about books, and suddenly, they feel more human to me, or we realize what we have in common. And to me, that is one of the most important things we can be doing right now. I really believe in that. I try my best to have open ears and hear people and understand people, because everybody has a story. Everybody comes from somewhere. And just because they don't agree with me doesn't mean that they're evil or that they're horrible. So it's hard these days to operate that way, I think, because we tend to be so bifurcated. We tend to be so in our camps and
tribal.
Very tribal. We're in a very tribal time. I think I agree with that. Certainly within my lifetime, I've never felt it this intensely before, where somebody will hear one thing I say in a video and suddenly I am in this, I've got all these labels, all over me,
Yeah.
And I have to be careful myself not to do that to people, to apply labels in, as soon as somebody says one thing, oh, you're this, you're that, you must be one of those, so it's really tough to do that. But I think, sitting over the campfire, this is a metaphor, of course, here, but sitting over the campfire, hearing these stories together is a way for us to recognize the humanity in one another.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think everyone is, I know I am, I'm guilty of picking the camp and staying in it. And everyone falls for that at some point. But the thing I think I've realized in having these long form conversations is that most people think what they're doing is right.
That's right.
And I know it is almost impossible. And I still struggle sometimes to see the other side. I'm not the prime example. I would say that you're actually a great example. I think that you're a bridge builder, and you have a really good ability to see things from other people's perspectives. That's something that Malazan absolutely challenged me in. And one of the things that's kind of stuck with me as I think about interactions that I've had in my personal life over the last, decade. And it's like, man, I wish I would have been a little bit more empathetic. And that doesn't mean, I think one thing that some people do get misconstrued is the fact that you can see from some other's perspective, but you don't have to be best friends with everybody.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Like that is a total valid thing. You don't have to support everything that someone does or any of that. I think that's still a valid option. But you also have to acknowledge that people generally are not fully evil. They do exist. We have Jeffrey Dahmers in the world, no doubt.
This is true. Yeah.
And I do think that sometimes, people, for instance, I come from an area, I moved, but I came from an area that was very opposite of how I felt about the world. So it is impossible for me not to have conversations with people that I fundamentally disagree with the nature of society or humanity. Yep. But I still do it every day. And I do try to see it from their perspective. One of the things in Malazan that was said, and this is paraphrasing it, but it's like, if you only embrace those who are worth embracing, then it becomes a reward and not an embrace. And I think that is one of the most powerful things I've ever read in fiction, because it's true. How cheap is your grace if you only apply to those that you enjoy or those people that you agree with? What is that?
That's so beautifully said. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Erickson.
Yeah. We've all learned a lot from him, for sure. Yeah. But it's true of Malazan that, for me, that's one of at the heart of that series, of that world, is this idea that, and we're constantly shown this again and again and again. There are characters you think and you think you have the right to judge because of certain things they've done. And then later on, you are shown that you didn't have the full picture. And you're given, maybe you would not be best friends with that person, but you had this understanding now, this understanding of that character's humanity. Yeah. And it changes, you suddenly go from judgmental to understanding. Yeah. And I'm not saying not necessarily even approving, but understanding. And it's a scary thing, the kind of certainty. To me, it's a scary thing. As I get older, I get more scared of this. The certainty with which people judge other people is something that I think is sometimes problematic. And I'm not saying don't have values, don't have morals, don't take a stand when it's important. You do Certainly. That. But I think sometimes we can go too far where we're not hearing the other people, and where we're lumping them in a category, we're slapping the label on them, and we'll never hear another thing they say. And where is the possibility then of reconciliation or redemption?
Yeah, I think it's very important to assess where the line is. I think people's tolerance in the line has definitely shrunk. And like I said, I feel like that's something that I've been reevaluating, especially over the last year, and especially reading Malazan. It's almost like a meme now, like Malazan is about compassion and empathy. Like people kind of joke about it. But one thing I would say is that people, you have to remember, like people are tired of hearing it, I guess. But here, the thing is that like we're such a niche right now.
Yeah.
So anytime we make a video, and I think that you approach like this, I can tell from your video, you have to assume as a content creator that the person is seeing you for the very first time. So you have to introduce yourself. You got to say why we're here. And you have to drive at the main pieces of what you're reading. And in Malazan, it really is compassion and empathy. So for the frequent flyers, they've heard the warrant. They know how to buckle the seatbelt. If the plane goes down, listen, we're all dead. But they know, you put the thing over. Don't fill your neighbors up until you fill yours. But you still got to say it every time they get on the flight. So every time someone takes a ride with us, especially when we're talking about Malazan or any of these other series, we have to do the usual suspects, and we have to hit the core themes, because that is what the literature stands upon, especially Malazan, is the themes.
Yep. That's why I say, welcome to my channel. I'm the best of fantasy.
That's right. Yes. And continuity is very important.
Yeah. Continuity is important. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's a really cool thing that we've gotten into, I think, this hobby.
Yeah. You would have probably never guessed that you would have 10,000 people subscribe that got to know your next sentence. Crazy, right?
It's crazy. It really is. But it's beautiful at the same time. For me, it's humbling. And it's beautiful to think that there are all these people who've been by the way, so helpful to me. I wouldn't have learned a fraction of what I've learned if it hadn't been for all the viewers. And I feel an incredible sense of gratitude to them for all the interactions that I've had. And some of them have been a little tough at first. I've been in quite a few exchanges where someone was mad at me for something I said, and then we get into a dialogue, and at the end of it, we're thanking each other for getting into this exchange. So that's a pretty cool thing. And where else is that happening in the world right now? Right. So
yeah, I would agree. And I think all of the other stuff, that's what makes it worth it at the end of the day, is the ongoing conversation, even whenever we are at ends and at odds with one another. As long as those conversations are had in good faith, I think there's a lot of room to grow as a person in this little community that we have.
Yeah.
And do you ever think back, like I've said this a couple of times on my channel, but it's like, I made these videos thinking that a couple hundred people would watch them. And now there's a chance that maybe in 5 or 10 years that tens of thousands of people will be watching.
Yeah.
Does that freak you out at all?
It hasn't yet. Maybe it should have. I don't feel that pressure when I'm making videos. I guess I've thought about that question, and maybe I'm just naive or something, but I have never felt pressure because of the number of people that watch. I don't feel like it makes a difference to me. So I'll make a video. I've learned by this point that, for example, a review of a specific book is going to get a certain number of views, and usually not that many.
Right.
Unless it's a really hot book that everybody's talking about, most reviews just don't get the numbers. And then there are certain topics and certain types of videos that get more, and all that. I'm aware of all that, but I don't think about it really at all. I just kind of do what I want to do. Yeah. Which is, I'm glad that people want to hear, whoever, if I get 50 views on a video or 1,000 or 10,000, I'm just glad that somebody is interested, and that I get to interact with them in the comments, and that I'm learning.
Yeah. The key is definitely doing what you want. That's everything.
Yeah, I think so. Being authentic that way is very important. There are certain types of videos that I understand why people do them. Mm-hmm. And I know that, okay, I'll be specific. I'm going to out myself here. and I don't mean this in any mean way at all. I don't mean to be judgmental or mean at all. But I understand why people like these and I have no problem with it, but I do not care about book haul videos. I just don't care what books you bought or what books you got. I don't care. I just don't. And I think that some people like that because they like collecting books, and
it's a totally different thing. Yeah,
it's a different thing. And people like that. And I have no problem with that. I'm glad that people enjoy that content. I don't watch book haul videos. I can count on one hand probably the number of book haul videos I've watched. And I'm like, huh. Now, a TBR video is a little different for me because you're telling me I'm going to read this and I'm interested in that because I want to know, because I follow your channel. I want to know what you're reading so that maybe I will be able to talk to you about this book when you review it or something like that. So I will watch TBR videos, and I make TBR videos, seasonal ones. So
yeah, I'll be honest, I actually love TBR videos. That's one thing I've been consistent. And I've seen people kind of poke fun at, like, oh, TBR video, that's the booktuber thing.
Yeah,
I kind of like it. I don't know. I like knowing what people are up to.
I do too. I get that, and I'm part of that because I enjoy that, and I want to know what my friends are reading, and if I'll be able to talk to them about certain books. So that's great. I just don't get the book haul, or even worse, the unhaul videos. I mean, I don't care what books you're getting rid of. I really don't. But okay. Obviously, some people dig it, and they're popular. I think way more.
They're very popular.
More popular than a review.
Certainly, I think that reviews age better though, because people will continue, and you never know what book's going to blow up. So, like, something can just get caught on fire, then your view blows up, whatever. I think those age better. They're like, they accumulate. Wrap ups, TBRs, they do not age well. They're great for your subscriber base.
Right.
Your subscribers are going to watch almost every update you post. Like, I always, like, if you look at, that little window, it tells you this is doing this in this window of time on YouTube.
Right.
All the top ones are always my wrap ups, because all my subs are like, oh, check out Jimmy, because they're there for you. Like, they want to hear your, updates. Whereas reviews, I have seen, they tend to start out slow, and then randomly one will just hit, and I'll see, my Way of Kings video has like 25,000 views, which is one of my worst reviews, by the way.
Interesting. How that works. Yeah.
Oh, I hate that video for multiple reasons, but one of the reasons is all right. In-world swearing in fantasy worlds makes a lot of sense because it's a part of the world building. Okay. It would make sense that people in another world would have their own swears. I get it.
Storms. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what I said. I said, but storms, I don't like. It doesn't carry weight for me. And people, and people will explain, well, that's because it's like a capital punish. I get that. I understand that it makes logical sense in the world that this would be a swear. Yeah. Storms is not the word for me. It just doesn't, it doesn't roll off the tongue. Like seven hells, seven hells. That makes sense to me.
That has some oomph to it.
It has some oomph to it. Even Wheel of Time, Blood and Bloody Ashes. That sounds good. There's some consonant, but it ends on the S. It works. Storms does work for me. So that is a
Hood's balls.
Hood's balls. Hood's balls, man. Fenner's teats. That's my favorite one. Fenner's teats. Those work though. And there's a way. The way it comes out of the mouth, it just works. So storms does not work for me. I said it was a one line in a 23-minute video I said that The Way of Kings was one of the best books I ever read. I went hyperbolic as hell with that video because I loved it. I had a great time when I read that book. It was perfect. All this stuff, dude. I have probably 1,000 comments on the video. Half of them are me. People are like, I don't understand why you don't like the word storms. Like, they're furious. I'm like, did you watch the other 98% of the video where I said this is like an achievement? Like, I love this book, so that's one of the bad things about, like, if a review does kind of come back from the dead, is like you start getting these comments and you're like, what in the world? Same thing happened with my Berserk video, except all the comments were great on that. But like, my Berserk video did not do well when I first released it. And then like 2 weeks ago, it got like 10,000 views in a week. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I just started getting comments, and you kind of notice, you're like, why are people commenting on this? And I look, and I'm like, what? Things at like 13 or 14,000 views all of a sudden. And you're just like, oh God. So I do think reviews have the opportunity to age well, but people do love the book hauls and stuff. I will say, I don't watch a ton of book hauls. I watch Alex's a lot because I love Alex. But
he's great. Alex is
yeah,
great.
I love Alex, and I watch his book hauls because his shelves are just gorgeous. So I am a book collector as well as a reader. I'm a bigger reader than I am a collector, but I have an affinity for collection. My parents do that a lot, and it's passed on to me. That's why I have the folios for Song of Ice and Fire, the sub press of Gardens of the Moon Discovery. So I do like that piece of it, but I have only ever done 2 book hauls. I don't like making them. They're not my favorite content to make. I hated filming my bookshelf tour. That's on my channel.
I did one. So if you watch my bookshelf tour, you'll see that I'm not a collector. I have the most ragged book collection on BookTube.
One of your Malazan books is pretty torn up, isn't it? Which one?
Oh my God. Okay. So I have Mass Market, and I only have 1 copy of each of the 10 books. And I have Mass Market. I have the trade paperback. I have 1 hardcover missing its jacket. I have different, versions of everything. It's a mess. And people on my bookshelf tour, I think I honestly gave some people a nervous breakdown because of the way especially if you have a little bit of OCD and you see my Malazan collection, it's just so eclectic, and I'm proud of it because I love those books and I've read them and I feel invested in those exact copies.
I know exactly what you mean.
But I am not a collector. I've never been. I was a graduate student for years, and then my wife was a grad student. We lived in grad student housing. We were poor. I didn't have money to buy brand new books. So I've always been a used book kind of guy, or whatever's cheapest out there. Only since starting BookTube have I started buying new books. Mm-hmm. And so I have a very ragged book collection, and I'm not into the whole collecting thing, really. I'm not. I used to, actually, for years, I didn't even buy books. I just went to the library when I wanted a book.
Which is the best way to go about it. Let's be honest. We should all be doing that probably. But I like supporting authors. That's one thing.
That's exactly why I started buying books, because I figure, all right, I love this genre. I want to support the people in it, and to do that, I have to buy books. So I've been buying books. But I get the whole thing. I definitely get people who have. I am a little bit envious of. You have beautiful shelves there behind you. I am envious of some of our friends here on BookTube who obviously put a lot of love and care into their collections. And so I get that. And no judgment whatsoever coming from me. But
if someone handed you a sub press of Gardens of the Moon, you wouldn't be upset.
I would take that.
Yeah, they're sweet, dude. They're sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I have to make all these videos with AP, and I'm looking at his collection. And he's got all the sub press books, the original, printing of the sub press books. And I'm like, whoa, okay, now I understand why people like to collect
gorgeous.
Yeah, he's got a gorgeous collection. So
he really does.
Yeah.
I know what you mean by well-read books, and you think back on because my Song of Ice and Fire mass markets are destroyed.
Oh, mine are all just falling apart. Yeah.
Never going to get rid of them. Never in my life. And in fact, on this reread, I have been using the folios because it has the illustrations and I like that. But a lot of the daily driving has been on those mass markets, and I'm still bending them in half. And there's something nostalgic about it. I love. But I feel like your book collection tells a story of you. Because exactly. You're getting new books, and you can see the ones that you had whenever, you didn't have $1 to your name and you were scrapping by just trying to make it. And now you have new books and you can afford those. And it's kind of a journey.
It absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, I was a grad student that was 20 years ago or more, but I still have those habits, I guess, ingrained in me. Or maybe I'm just a cheapskate, but yeah.
When I got back in the reading, I went to Barnes & Noble. I did buy a bunch of new books, and I was like, why would anyone not just buy mass market paperbacks? And then I quickly realized
tiny print.
Yeah, the Stormlight Archive. I was like, oh God, this is miserable. Because I will say this, the Song of Ice and Fire mass markets are actually decent. They have good print, the font's big, there's not a ton of inconsistencies, but then you get some of these and you're just like, I can't read this at all.
Yeah. I've been leaning, and my eyes are getting a little older, so I've been leaning more and more toward the trade paperbacks, which seem to me the Goldilocks zone of books, because the mass market is cheap, but I can barely see the print. And hardcover, it looks beautiful on the shelf, but it's not that comfortable to read with.
It's not practical. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I would agree, especially bigger books. The Malazan trade paperbacks are rough because they're actually decently thick, but they're not like crazy like the Stormlight books are. But the font is so small in some of those Malazan books.
Yeah,
and that's why I really should just use my e-reader. But me and my wife were just talking about it today. I'm like, it makes no sense not to use an e-reader. Makes zero sense. But I can tell you, I just can't seem to pick it up more than a physical book. I love physical books.
Yeah, I do too. I have never done an audiobook. I don't have an e-reader. I'm old.
I love it. Analog.
Yeah. So I keep telling people I think I'll try an audiobook someday. And I know there are certain ones I hear recommended a lot, like First Law, for example. Yeah. Dresden Files is another one that I hear about. So I might, since those are series I have read, I would only do it, I think, with a series that I've read before, because I have a feeling it's going to be really hard for me to pay close attention to. If I'm trying to read something for the first time, I'm going to miss a ton of stuff on an audiobook. I'm not a multitasker, Jimmy. I can't work out and listen to an audiobook. I can't do it. I just can't. So
it depends on how the book's written a lot of times, in my opinion. I'm with you. I'm actually not a multitasker, but I've started to be able to do this with audiobooks, but it depends on the narration. Like for some reason, Stephen King on audio, I can do it all day. Brandon Sanderson on audio, the way he writes. You're never going to miss anything. Yeah. I mean, he repeats things, and that's good. That's fine. I think he does that intentionally. Our Scott Baker on audio only, probably not going to work for me. Right. And even Lord of the Rings, to an extent, I think is pretty good on. I mean, Andy Serkis is amazing. I'm not saying
if you've read it enough times.
Yes, and A Song of Ice and Fire, I can just listen on audio if I want, because I know most of what's going on 99% of the time, right? So I actually agree with you. I think a first time like read through, if you're listening, for me personally, can be rough depending on the writing style.
Yeah. I just don't trust myself to catch what I would want to catch. I would also be wanting to rewind. Oh, what a pretty sentence. And how hard is it to rewind when you're doing an audiobook?
It can be a pain. It could be a pain for sure.
Yeah. So I would be constantly wanting to do that, and it would not work, certainly for a first time read. I'm willing to give it a try. Maybe if I'm on a long car trip, if I go visit you, maybe I'll get an audiobook to play on the way or something. But
absolutely. I do. Me and my wife have listened to an audiobook together, and that is a really fun experience. We do it with House in the Cerulean Sea.
Oh, cool.
By TJ Klune. Awesome experience. She had already read it, so it was a reread for her, and it was my first time through, and that audiobook was just fantastic. And the way it was written complemented audio, I thought.
Yeah.
I do a lot of immersion reading, so I will listen to the audiobook while reading the book. I did it for almost every Malazan book.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of that before.
Some people hate it. I love it, especially Malazan, because Michael Page does a great job with some of those gravelly voices, and it really brings the character to life for me. So,
so you're actually with the book, you're following along as the audio narration is happening.
Yes, and what I have found is some days when I feel very fatigued, it's a good way to. It's almost like it helps me. It's an enabler to kind of get into it. And sometimes I'll shut the audio off, especially if I can't find the right speed for the audiobook with my reading pace. I'll get started that way, get sucked in, and I turn off the audio, and then I just go. And it's funny because I'll still hear the narrator in my head. Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it has been very good for me, especially with Malazan.
I think that's so cool. And it doesn't surprise me in a way that you would do that, because you're somebody who's disciplined and you're familiar with exercise. It seems like a way to sort of get yourself into form, right?
It's a warm up. It's a warm up.
Yeah.
And in my brain right now, when I think of lines from Malazan, I can hear the narrator Trell Singar. It's that's how I say Trell in my head, because I heard it from Michael Page. And it adds a whole nother layer to the experience, I think. So for me personally, it definitely kind of gets the gears flowing, and then I can go. And you're right, I treat it like exercise. My reading is a habit, so I exercise every day, whether it's jiu-jitsu or weightlifting, or sometimes both. I read for 2 hours a day minimum. I'm trying to hit that 100-page mark every day.
Yep.
And those are things that are non-negotiable. Like they have to happen for my day to be complete. So,
and I totally admire that. I think we are our habits in a way. You become your habits.
yeah.
So yeah, I admire that very much, that you have that discipline, and that's going to get you far in a lot of realms, actually.
Yeah, I think consistency and discipline have been the guiding forces in my life for the achievements I've been able to do, because I've never been inherently talented in anything. The only thing I've ever been good at is fake fighting in wrestling, and that's over. But even then, I was never the most athletic or charismatic or good looking or best body or anything, but just being disciplined took me very far, further than I should have ever been, being a kid from a small town in, Southwestern PA, West Virginia border. I should have never been, I should have never been on TV. I should have never done any of these things, but staying disciplined helps a lot. And I'm now accomplishing series that I want to read. BookTube. I'm not the most prolific creator, but I'm consistent and I'm disciplined.
Oh, you're doing a fantastic job with your channel. Beautiful
I appreciate
job.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you. It is what it is. Like, I'm doing everything I can. I'll never be able to make the beautiful videos that I see some people make, like Lost in Discovery. I'm so envious, partially because there's series that don't get a lot of attention that I want to make those beautiful videos for.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's just not in my wheelhouse. Maybe one day I'll learn. I know Christian's offered to teach me, which is cool.
Well, then no better teacher than that.
None. Yeah, he's great. And maybe I'll add that, but it's staying disciplined and being like, okay, these are the couple things that I really like doing, like long form conversation. I'm going to grind those and get better and better and better.
Yeah.
And it's worked out. Well,
I would say that you're wrong about the natural talent thing, because to me, you seem like a really natural talent for this. You seem like somebody who's very comfortable and very articulate, actually. But I will also agree with you and say that it's the people who keep their nose to the grindstone who accomplish the most. And I see it all the time as a teacher. You could have somebody who's extremely brilliant and talented, but if they're lazy and if they don't do the work, they'll get through the class because they're that smart, but they will only do as much as they need to do to get through it.
Yes.
The people I really admire are the ones who work their butts off and get from here to here by the end of the semester. Yeah. And I'm in awe of those people, and I admire them tremendously. So, and I do think that in the long term, while the really talented person who starts off here is going to just stay here, the one who's working hard is going to get from here to here, and then he's going to go way up here,
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, on a personal level, like, what is exceeding and what is making it and what is doing, like, for me, I like, as far as like my channel goes, I'm good. Like, if I stay at 6,000, whatever I am, 60, I think it's like 6,200. If I stay here for the rest of the time,
you're going to get much bigger.
I know it's kind of scary. Like, I'd be fine with what I have. I still recognize my commenters, and I have relationships with people through comments and stuff. And I do worry about maybe losing that in the future. But, I think having a vision of what you want out of something is important. You don't have to have all the answers, but certainly having some sort of end goal or a way you want to go about things is important. I taught myself how to code. I switched careers later in life, and when we moved here, and I don't have a degree or anything, but I became a software developer through that discipline. And I'm still not the most talented guy. I can't do these algorithms and stuff people do. I'm rotten. But I made my own niche, and I knew what I wanted out of the job. I wanted a job I could be happy with, working from home, and I wanted to create things, and I get to do that now. And I do it as best as I possibly can. There are better people than me, but I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about me. William Regal from WWE said this, a phenomenal wrestler, one of the best ever in ring. He was like, every second you spend worrying about why the other guy took your spot is time that you could have been building your own space and building on your own self. Yeah. And I've taken that to heart in a lot of ways. And even in BookTube, right? Like, I just knew I wanted to do my own things. And I see some people say, I can't believe this person's gaining these subs, and, or even commenters will say, you're so much better than them. Why don't you have as many? I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I'm just here to have fun. I'm here to have fun.
Yeah. It's what you're learning. That's way more important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Those are lessons I learned as a runner too. I was pretty competitive, nowhere near elite, but particularly as a half marathon runner, I was running, close to 6-minute miles for 13.1 miles, which is not elite, but it was pretty good.
I mean, that's better than I've ever done.
Yeah. And but I made the mistake of making it more about competition and less about how satisfying is this for me.
Yeah.
And I think if I had the wisdom that I gained as an older person, looking back on that, I would have told my younger self, it's okay. You don't have to pass these next 3 people. You just need to enjoy the benefits that you're bringing to your own body right now, and enjoy that runner's high for yourself. You don't have to be, at the front of the race,
Yeah.
So.
I love that, because I've always found that the competition within myself is more motivating than competition with another person, because I don't really care like what's going on over there. And reading is it's a solitary activity. And watching myself, challenging myself with new reads like Malazan and eventually like Gene Wolfe and things, I love the idea of being in competition with my older self. And then the beautiful part is that we get to come and talk about our growth and our expansion of taste and things like on something like this. So
it's pretty incredible. It's a nice hobby.
It is
very meaningful for me. And I feel like, because of various things that have been happening around higher education and education in general in this country, I'm able to enjoy my discussions around literature even more here on BookTube than I am where I should be enjoying them at my college. I love my students. My students are wonderful. So I'm never going to complain about them. And they're always teaching me. So I'm grateful for that. But the politics of what's happened around higher education and the increasing emphasis, this corporatization of higher education, where it's about students becoming customers rather than learners, and the emphasis on how can we get more of them through the door. And when you cut those corners and you do those things to get the customers through the door, you're compromising the quality of their education. And to me, that is absolutely the worst thing you could do. So I get frustrated with that sometimes.
Well, I think not just as a person that is administrating, and teaching, I think the learners are frustrated. And I think a lot of people are disenfranchised with higher education. And I'll tell you what, that's why we have audiences, because people know that we might not be the most, and we're not authorities on any of this stuff, but we provide a platform to have conversations that then further your learning and further yourself and your intellect and your taste and everything. And I think that that's why, like, YouTube is such a successful platform. I learned how to code from YouTube. I didn't go to university.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. Hours and hours on YouTube. And I have creators that I have emailed and I thanked. I said, you literally changed my life because you provided a place that's just about learning the skill. It's not about making sure you have this and that and feeling like a customer. I felt like I was bettering myself every day on my own time. And I think that that's kind of why we've been able to garner audiences here on BookTube. And I think that this is our little niche of learning.
Yeah, it's true. It's really true. And I have heard it both makes me really happy, but it also makes me sad when I hear from a viewer something like, wow, I never got anything like this in college. Thank you so much. And I really enjoy these discussions because I feel like I'm excited about literature for the first time. And that makes me happy because it's a really nice compliment, but it also makes me sad because, wow, what are we doing in higher education? Why aren't you getting this excitement in your college classes? Why can't we be engaging people in the way that obviously you and I have felt happen on our channels? And that is sad to me that we're failing people that way in higher education.
Yes. And I mean, certainly that's a problem, right? But I think it also says the fact that you care and the fact that you are now doing, I mean, you're teaching still, right? When you're here on your channel for fun. And I think that says a lot about you and your passion and who you are as a person. You are a teacher.
Yeah, I'm still wearing my tweed.
Damn right. But we need more people like you, in higher education to right the wrongs. And hopefully over time, the more people that go up and up and make the big shots, the big calls rather, will have the right intention in mind.
Yeah, I'm still kind of waiting for the big wake up to the vast potential that is YouTube. I don't honestly know if you can make something of the TikTok stuff and all that, how much educating can go on there. But this format, this platform, to me, is ideal for deep, life transforming learning experiences. And it's also very practical. But it's just the potential here is enormous, and it is largely untapped so far.
Yes, especially for us in literature.
Yeah.
I believe that one day people will have their little forwards in their books in 10 years, and they'll say, special thanks to AP Canavan and his series on YouTube. I really do. I think AP, his videos are so educational and helpful for new writers. I know because I write myself, and AP has been a massive tool. AP sounds like I called him a tool. I mean that in a positive way.
Not a Tlanamas tool. No.
Yes, there you go. No, he's been amazing and so helpful, and has guided me in the right direction. And through his videos, you can learn a lot. So.
Absolutely, yeah. AP is bringing content to YouTube that no one else I know of is doing, including
it's
myself,
worth a lot of money,
including myself. Honestly, the talks that he's had with Steven Erikson, I would pay money. I have paid money for a masterclass in writing. What they're doing is better than what I paid for. So I wish more people were watching those videos. I mean, I'm amazed at. I mean, they've got a decent enough view count, but nowhere near what they should be.
For how many people who want to be writers, I think that and obviously, they have to know about it. So there's that piece. But I try to mention them all the time that when I talk to people who are writing, I'm like, you should go check out this guy. He's an editor, and he's professional, and he is being so transparent that it's really incredible.
Yeah, no, it's such. I mean, the value of those videos. I mean, we talked before about how reviews are going to maintain value longer term as opposed to other types of content. Those videos, those are gold to me.
Yes.
Those should be around forever for people to watch and learn from.
Yeah. And I think my Chatting with Nuts, if I could put myself over for a second, the Chatting with Nuts with Erikson is a motivator. It is a writing, I wouldn't say a workshop, but just like a getting started guide to writing, when he talks about killing and murdering the inner critic. Oh my goodness. It is just a fabulous way of looking at things. And the fact that Erikson was so transparent with his process and his motivations and how he overcame humps and things like that.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that from a lot of the other big sellers. You're just not. So the appreciation I have for that is unlimited.
Yeah, his level of honesty and engagement is definitely the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
And I think that I can get that. I think a lot of authors just value their privacy.
Certainly.
And you make yourself vulnerable when you come out and you engage with people. You absolutely open yourself up. You make yourself vulnerable. And I'm so grateful that Steven Erikson has been as engaged as he's been. He's really enriched a lot of people's lives through that, not only through his books, but his willingness to meet us and treat us just like people we're talking with and enjoying his books and we're learning from each other, and it's really quite fantastic.
Yeah, he's a fantastic human being. Like I just enjoy talking to the guy. I think he's extraordinarily thoughtful.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, I hope that you and I will both in the future have chances to talk to more authors, perhaps. And awesome. Wouldn't you love a Robin Hobb interview?
I've tried. I've sent out feelers. I got one more avenue I'm going to try to go down and see if I can maybe get it to happen. But we'll see.
I haven't seen her in a lot of interviews on YouTube.
No, she's done a couple tour live. I think it was tour. One of the publishers had a live where she was on, and she also did Brian McClellan's, I think it's like another page. I can't remember his podcast name. It's rather good, but she was on there and taking questions. To imagine her on a Chatting with Nuts live stream would be, I mean, that'd be it. I'd close the channel after, because I'd never ever reach that level again, So.
Yeah. She's interviewed. I saw an exchange with her and Christopher Paolini. I think we're talking with each other. Have you seen that video?
I have not.
Interesting. You need to watch it. It's where she explains the origins of her dragons and their life cycle and all of that, which I know you know about.
I've heard of it. I've heard of it, but I've never watched it. I will watch that.
Yeah, it's fun because, of course, Paolini's famous for writing a series about dragons too. So it was kind of cool because I think it was him interviewing her about her approach, which is unique.
My favorite dragons.
Yeah, her approach to dragons is really cool. But I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't heard, but there is a particular species here on planet Earth that she's based their life cycle on, and
it's beautiful.
It's really cool.
It's so cool. Yeah, it's a very practical way of getting the most out of like our world, but putting it in a fantastical element that just blows your mind whenever you figure it out. It's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. Well, we will wish for that. I will wish for that for you, Jimmy. That
I appreciate
one day you will get to interact with Robin Hobb. And I'll be totally jealous of you on that day too. But I'll be happy as well. I'll be happy as well.
Well, hopefully it happens.
Yeah, we'll see. We got to have those dreams. We got to have those goals. That's what keeps us going. So. Yeah,
you can't be afraid to fail.
That's right. That's right. Well, I really want to thank you for this. I have been enjoying this last, how long? Almost 2 hours. Which I'm not Alan, okay, and I'm not you, and I cannot go for 3 hours or more. But I have enjoyed myself thoroughly. It's been a real pleasure and a joy to not only talk to you today, but to get to know you as a friend here on BookTube. I really feel very honored by your friendship, and it's something special for me. So thank you very much, Jimmy.
Yeah, man, I'm more than happy and privileged to be here. And I was so happy whenever you reached out to me, because whenever you said you were going to start doing this, I was like, I hope he has me on, because I do a lot of these on my channel, right? Like you've been on twice and we've done them Malazan, but just having the opportunity to talk to your audience and have them hear these kind of conversations is awesome. But I value you as a friend. I love hanging out with you, man. We're gonna meet in person eventually. It's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
We're not that far away from each other, so it's going to happen. Yeah. And I genuinely mean it whenever I call you friend. So thank you for that.
All right, Jimmy. Well, take care of yourself, and everybody, thank you so much for watching Dear Dr. Fantasy, and until next time.